So this is Beyond Awareness to Advocacy, optimizing the video throughout the customer lifecycle. And I've been going to the Video Commerce Summit, which is upstairs, for years. And they're e-commerce, they're very ROI driven, and that's absolutely acceptable and totally understandable. At the same time, there's lots of opportunities to use video to sort of move the customer down that life cycle, that process. So, I'm very interested in how that can be done, and I'm going to try and move real quick here. I'm going to allow the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll go right into questions. But before I do that, I want to thank our session sponsor, Bright Cove, and rather than do a introduction, I'm going to show a brief video case study that they did.
There has always been an allure of putting an ad on TV and making sure that a ton of people get to see it. But actually, the most interesting thing right now is to provide a video-based journey that maybe starts with a TV spot or maybe starts with a rich media ad, but actually continues that story as we draw people into our owned assets. We sell footwear, apparel, and accessories, but the brand really comes alive through the context in which we put those products in. And doing more with video is the place where we like to play the most these days. For the Olympics, Puma had developed an entire brand environment for people to interact with. And there were two significant pieces of live streaming that we did. The first was a fashion show in London that we live streamed the event on Puma.com and Facebook. And at that same day, the products were available on the EU online store. The larger live stream event was simply showcasing what the yard has to offer. And we were able to time that with Usain Bolt's runs in the 100 meter and the 200 meter. As everybody at the yard and everyone at home was going to be watching these significant races, we were able to use Brightcove Video Cloud to coax our users to have a multi-screen experience. The Brightcove Video Cloud was very clearly the best choice. It allows us to look at the video asset itself as an opportunity for engagement to happen. We can provide links, we can provide cadence-specific calls to action. There are hundreds of videos that are produced throughout regional marketing offices or international marketing offices every month. So they need to be really carefully stored. A video cloud was able to have multiple users in multiple regions, and it was also able to push out a lot of content to all of the social media channels where these video assets are consumed. I think that was, as a foundation, why a video asset management system was extremely valuable. And our analytics show that the more we use video, the more brand engagement and the more time we have with our customers.
I think that does a better job than I could ever do. That's a great example of a large brand we're all familiar with that I think is pushing how they use video in a great way. So, and they rely on Brightcove for that. So, let's go back a slide. Here we go. And I'm going to go ahead and allow you guys to introduce yourselves because you'll do a better job of that as well. So, maybe we'll start from the end. Rob?
Oh, lucky me. All right. Mark, thank you, and the Real SEO team for a great event so far, and appreciate all the good work and great panelists. I'm Rob Champ. I'm with Pixability. So we're a very, very cool technology company that's helping brands, their agencies, and media companies do amazing things on YouTube. And we're going to share some of that stuff today during our conversation. And I've also had the pleasure of co-authoring a study that's coming out in 2 weeks about the top 100 brands and how they use YouTube, and the results are rather dramatic. And I'll share some of those when we talk about the funnel today.
Great, thank you. Stu?
Yeah, I'm Stu Barnes, Commercial Director with Brightcove, the session sponsor. We were, as the video explains, we're a horizontal platform which enables brands to execute best-in-class video experiences. Very excited about sponsoring the session because we're super committed to helping people use video in every stage of the customer lifecycle rather than just in awareness generation.
Excellent, thanks.
Good morning. I'm Linda Crow with Oracle. I'm the Director of Digital Media Marketing, and I'm responsible for leading Oracle's strategic direction as well as all of the in-house production, driving video branding, as well as all of the asset management, distribution, and measurement of video for the entire company. While I'm relatively new to Oracle, I've been there about 8 months. I have a lot of past experience in this same field. I was doing a very, very similar role with Sun Microsystems for about 3 years prior to their acquisition by Oracle.
Cool. Great. Thanks. Tony?
Hi, good morning. My name's Tony Kybird, and I'm Head of Customer Success at Sunday Sky. I'm the second Brit on the panel today. At Sunday Sky, we're the creators of smart video, and what that means is we have a platform which creates personalized videos from data in real time that are measurable and can deliver on a scale. We have clients such as AT&T, Lenovo, Office Depot, and Allstate delivering personalized smart video engagements to their clients throughout several different touch points in the life cycle. Everything from acquisition type of engagement through to onboarding of new clients, transactional type events such as billing or payments, and through to offers and promotions through loyalty programs. Key thing being that all of those events can be measured and tracked for performance, and we can track performance to optimize for business value back to our clients.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm gonna queue up a presentation from Linda about how they're using video at Oracle and how they're using that to approach their customers across the customer lifecycle.
Back further. Okay, great. I think I'll just... Good morning. So when I was asked to give this talk, I thought about, the reason why I mentioned earlier that I have done this job previously is because when I look at what we at Oracle have done, I see so many things that we need to do still. And so when I was asked to give this presentation, I was kind of interested to hear that there are some folks who think that we're doing this particularly well. Because I think that because as I said, I see so many things in so many directions that we need to go. And being somewhat of a perfectionist, I guess I see all the flaws. So given that, what I thought about was how can I bring some value to the people in this room, given that I've done this role before, given that I have been in video marketing for about 6 years now. What are some of the learnings that I've had over the last few years, and how might I be able to paint the picture for some people who may not be as far into video production, may not have done it as long, may not be doing it at the scale that Oracle is, and perhaps may not be quite as far down that path, or may not be looking at the sheer volume that we're looking at. So that was what I thought I would do for you today. Let me just see a quick show of hands. How many people are new to video production? How many people feel like you're just wading into those waters? Just a couple. Okay, so most of you feel like you're pretty much veterans. How many folks feel like you really understand how to scale and you really understand how to get video out in large volume? Okay, not many. All right, good. So hopefully I've got some tips and tricks for you then. I wanted to give you a little flavor of what I mean by scale. I know most of you may not be working for a company as large as Oracle. It's pretty daunting. We have 390,000 customers, and that's not counting our partners, resellers, or developers. And when we start getting into those numbers, we're talking about literally millions. Most of the Fortune 100, all of the Fortune 100 use Oracle products, so we are talking to a wide variety of audiences here. We're talking to enterprise audiences, B2B, We are talking to developers, we're talking to everything in between. In some cases, we are talking to consumers because we want to be on the forefront of some of those Java applications, and we want people to be using Java. So we've got this very large audience. We've got just over 115,000 employees, and though my department is responsible for external communications primarily, we do some internal communications, and we have to address that and be able to scale to reach that kind of an audience. We've also been acquiring companies at a very furious pace, over 90, just since 2005, which means our product portfolio is over 900 products and services. I just went and counted that up the other day. It's a huge product portfolio, and we're talking about video, and how do you communicate video and customer value across all of those different products. And we're also operating in more than 145 countries. So we need to figure out how do we communicate with those audiences regardless of what language. A little bit about my team. I talked a little bit about this when I introduced myself, but I wanted to give you a flavor for the breadth of what I'm really looking at. Until I came on board with Oracle about 8 months ago, video was really pulled into two different departments. There was the technical team, which was responsible for all the studio operations and all of the systems that manage and deliver video online. And then there was the production group, the creative people, the producers. When I came on board, we pulled all of that together into one team so that we could have a strategic direction and start to really think about video more strategically in terms of how do we start figuring out video across a marketing lifecycle? How do we get strategic about what we're communicating, what we're measuring, and then producing better content and measuring the results and the ROI from that? So we are just stepping into those waters. In terms of really thinking strategically and really starting to figure out what our metrics and measurement and reporting systems are going to be. The underlying principle that we're going after is really the customer lifecycle, and it's not a funnel. It really is more of a continuing cycle. So it's about engaging that customer, walking them through their research, helping them evaluate, helping them with selection of the product once they've acquired it. How do they use it? How do they deploy it? How do they maintain it? And then can we elicit a recommendation from them for other customers who may be starting on this journey? And they're going to continue to go through that. If you think about when you buy products, particularly software products, you're constantly going through that phase of how do I once you get it installed, then down the line at some point, after you've been using it for a while, you're going to get upgrades. How do you make sure that that customer continues down that upgrade path with you? So when I think about video in the marketing lifecycle, what I need to think about, or when it gets instantiated, what we do is we think about video. How do people find that video? It may be on an Oracle website. It may be on YouTube. It may be on many of the other social channels. I don't have a build in here. Sorry, let me build that out for you. So how do they find the video? And how do we get those audiences then, once they've seen that video, to come back to an Oracle page? That's always my ultimate goal. How do we drive audiences back to an Oracle website? Because if I want to engage with those audiences, I want that happening on my website. I don't want it happening on a third-party engagement platform. Now, that's not to say that social media isn't valuable. It's incredibly valuable. And we do use social media, and we are going to continue with YouTube. But when I want to engage with my audiences in a much richer engagement, I'm not going to do that on YouTube. I want that happening on Oracle, on an Oracle property. And then from that page, whether it's a campaign page, a solution page, a product page, it may be a training page. How do we continue to keep those audiences engaged and consuming more content? How do we get them to watch another video? How do we can we offer them a data sheet or a white paper? Maybe they want to participate in a webcast. What is that marketing lifecycle, and how do we engage them? What are the next steps? So the challenge that I have, given the scale and size of Oracle and the number of products and the number of audiences that I'm reaching is really the scale and the pace. How do we keep on top of that? It's not easy. And how do we elevate the conversation around video? I am fairly new to the role. We haven't had somebody who really has thought about video from a strategic standpoint. It's been very, very much a point solution, and not driven from the standpoint of what are you trying, what are you trying to tell your audience? What are you trying to measure? What are you trying to elicit from them? What do you want them to walk away with when they watch your video? That really hasn't been a discipline, and so trying to implement that. Complex and emerging use cases. When you have a product portfolio of over 900 products and an audience that ranges from incredibly technical and enterprise-oriented to software developers to marketing people to human resources people, you can see that the audiences quickly become very unwieldy and very difficult to manage. And how you reach those audiences then becomes even more complex. So we're trying to solve that. How do we really scale and address this complexity of audience and use cases for video? Being in a large corporation, I have to balance innovation versus rock-solid stability. When Larry Ellison calls and says he wants to do a webcast, I better make sure that that webcast gets on the web, period. And that's very difficult to do sometimes, given some of our systems. How do we innovate, and how do we really go out and get these new audiences, given that I have to meet very incredibly high standards for information security? I'll give you an example of that. Recently, we started evaluating a tool that would allow us to promote user-generated video on our website. And we found this wonderful SaaS solution that doesn't ever hit, it allows us to upload video without those videos ever hitting an Oracle server. And to be able to populate those videos on an Oracle website. I'm now in a 3-month process to get that approved through my information security department, because it is a third-party solution, it's not an Oracle solution, and it's using a cloud infrastructure that we don't own and control. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. What I'm saying is that it's a balance. And being able to provide that service and be innovative in the face of some of these challenges can be daunting. Let's see, asset management with blended distribution. We do use YouTube extensively. We're going to continue to use YouTube extensively and probably expand our usage of YouTube. And at the same time, when I want to engage audiences on an Oracle.com site, because of those information security policies, I can't do that with YouTube. So we must have a blended distribution strategy. And there are a lot of reasons why that makes sense. Besides the information security reasons, I really want to have that rich engagement, and there are some things that I can do with an online video platform that I can't do with YouTube. So we will continue down that path. That makes my asset management challenge pretty high, because now I've got to manage the same content on 2 different platforms. I've got 2 different reporting tools. I've got, parity issues. How do we make sure that the information is the same between the 2? So continuing with that. Talked about information security, and then measurement and analytics. We don't do it well. I'm trying to figure out how do we get there. I have done this in the past, where have been able in the past to implement really rich and robust reporting mechanisms that allow me to figure out, once somebody's viewed the video, have they clicked on the call to action? Have they looked at another video? Have they continued in the path, in the funnel, to really engage with our company? And ultimately, where I have been able to get to, we'll see if I'll be able to do this at Oracle, I have been able to get to the point where we could actually measure a video view session that resulted in sales leads. So it's a really interesting ROI analysis when you can go to a content requester and say, yeah, your video only got 200 views, but those 200 views resulted in 3 sales leads that now have led to $500,000 in sales, or in leads, I should say. And we have seen that in the past. So that's really where I want to try to go with metrics. That's not quite where we are yet. So I'm not going to go through all of these bullet points because I think you guys get the point. I really want to focus on what are the things that I know about video marketing and what might you think about as you're looking to go further down the path, as you're looking to scale out your production. So first, be really clear about what your content strategy is. There have been a number of panelists up here this morning that have talked about that, and I just want to underscore and echo everything they've said. Yes, be brave. Make your content relevant. It is about content. It's not about product information. You really want to be able to tell that story, that human story, especially at the early phases of the marketing life cycle. As you get into more engagement, yes, your audiences are going to want to know more about the product and you can get more technical. And my experience tells me that as you get more engaged with those audiences and as you get more technical with your content information or more detailed with your product information, then your audiences are going to stick around longer than 2 or 3 minutes. I've seen that happen. I've seen the metrics that support that. So really think about what is it that you're trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish with this particular video at this phase in the life cycle, given this audience? Help them solve their business problem. And then on the back end side, definitely scale, plan for scale and plan for redundancy. I can't emphasize this enough because I don't care how big your video production environment is right now, it's going to get bigger. Video is only growing and people are consuming it more on the web than they have in the past, and that's only going to continue. People want video. And they're going to want all kinds of video. So really think about what's your workflow? How can you optimize that? How can you take some of those steps out? How do you manage your assets? Think about not only from an asset management standpoint, but how do you really distribute this out? How do you make asset management part of your management strategy in terms of managing all of your video content? Make sure you plan for enough storage space. I can't emphasize that enough. We are going through some pain points right now and trying to modify our workflow as a result of growing storage. And we manufacture storage. I can't get enough of it. Think about SEO. Tagging, metadata is really, really critical. It's not just critical from the standpoint of somebody finding your video, it's also really critical from the standpoint of managing your assets and knowing what you have, knowing what video you've got so that you can repurpose it. If you're not using an asset management system, consider it. We have a back-end asset management system that is sort of the heartbeat of our entire operation, and there are many, many things that we have been able to automate and streamline as a result of having that, so think about it. And then a distribution strategy. I really believe in syndication. Don't rehost your assets if you possibly can avoid it. Syndicate them. For many, many reasons. From an asset management standpoint, it makes things much, much simpler. From a metric standpoint, it makes things much, much simpler. From the standpoint, and in terms of asset management, that if you've ever got a problem with your video, you'll be able to pull it much easier if you're syndicating content as opposed to if you're rehosting. If you've got assets scattered everywhere, you're never going to be able to get your arms around that. And then the last one is measure, measure, and then measure again. And on that point, I want to just play a short video for you.
Thanks, Linda. Let's give Linda a round of applause. I, I hope that at least 10,000 of those employees are yours, because, geez, that's a big scalability issue. So I'd like to start off kind of with the opportunity, because I'm not sure if everyone understands the opportunity with video. We all understand that video can be really powerful at telling a story. It can be very powerful at generating awareness. We're all familiar with these viral hits that make it. But what's the next opportunity? Where's the low-hanging fruit in terms of, and we'll start with Rob, because I know you've got some YouTube ideas here, but what would be the next thing, and obviously this depends on industry, but that you've seen that's really working to help push that customer through the funnel or life cycle?
Yeah, it's a great question. As I mentioned, we look at brands nonstop, we look at YouTube nonstop, we measure a lot of stuff. The biggest challenge that we see is there is an awareness mentality that's really retarding some of the video adoption efforts. And what I mean by that is we see a lot of larger brands especially repurposing television content on YouTube. That may work for the Super Bowl or pre-Super Bowl, but it doesn't necessarily work for your business. There seems to be an aversion for longer form content on YouTube. And what we find is when you put longer form content, it doesn't mean take your 30-second commercial and make it 5 minutes, because people won't watch it. How about putting a how-to video out there if you've got a product? And surprisingly, one of the things that came back from our study is that long-form content, 5-10 minutes, we've seen it frequently outperform a 30-second slot, which is radical. The other thing to take away to finish answering the question is don't feel that you as a marketer need to produce that longer form content. Your share of voice now as a brand or as a company on YouTube is this big. The broader community, your passionate audience, is this big. We talked about curation this morning with Susie. That's a big deal. Pull it all in together.
And how about you, Tony? Got a much different and interesting product, and your customers use it for all sorts of things. But what has been the most powerful, or what are some advice you have there?
Sure. So I guess beyond awareness, what we're seeing with our clients is a belief that personalization is really taking video from awareness to action. So in the same way that video can be measured for performance in the late stages of the acquisition cycle, equally it can be used to drive behavior and action with clients once they get into the engagement life cycle. So we believe that through a combination of data and personalization and a keen focus on performance and measurability, you're going to see video become much more accountable through the life cycle stages of client engagement.
All right, so there's good opportunity. Actually, Stu, with Brightcove and all of your customers, I know there's some live streaming, they do all sorts of things. What have you heard beyond awareness is a good opportunity?
Yeah, so I think there's sort of three areas that we're seeing some significant momentum in, and one is in the sort of selection and buying phase of the life cycle. So as Tony says, we're seeing a lot more people do things like integrate call to action widgets into their video experiences, at given points in the video, triggering some kind of direct response. And so we're seeing that really help to drive the selection and buying process. But then there are other areas of the life cycle where we're seeing some interesting work. So for example, advocacy and consideration, people are doing some great stuff with social media, not just YouTube, but Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, if you're more of a B2B player. And that really does seem to be delivering some great results in advocacy and consideration. And finally, from a retention and loyalty perspective, we're seeing people doing sort of video-based apps, because obviously apps reside with the user at all time on their mobile device. And the stats are that there's a lot more engagement in apps than there are on web experiences. And so we're seeing people doing some very cool stuff around video apps, which are really driving some great loyalty and retention metrics.
That's great. And I meant to mention this at the onset, but one of the reasons I'm so interested in this topic is we've heard this other topic mentioned numerous times, which is everyone wants to know what's the ROI of my video, and they want to know that right now. And it's pretty hard to prove what the ROI is when you're just measuring some form of awareness. But if you're using video further in different parts of the funnel, you might be able to roll that up and find some learnings there. So I'd like to move on to engagement and how that changes, or does the video content itself or story or messaging need to change once they're further down the funnel? And why don't we start with Rob again? Ian?
Yes, it's a great question. The content actually, it changes fairly dramatically. I mean, there's a continual theme about the story. You heard it this morning. And you've got to have the story there. And I think throughout the entire event, I think if there's something we have to think about, whether it's at the top of the funnel or mid-funnel, if your content's terrible, video marketing is going to do nothing for you. So, if there's no story, don't worry so much about production quality. And if there's people in the audience who produce very, very nice videos, Avatar, I don't mean to offend you, but it's better for everybody in this audience. If there's $150,000 to spend on video, do 15, don't do 1. So when you go down that funnel, you can lay off the production. It doesn't say you're going to be putting out garbage, in terms of production. But tell your story, lay off the production, and produce more relevant content. It's also important, we tend to forget as marketers, people need to be guided. There's smart people that are out there. Help them on their video journey. Help them into the funnel. So have things, if you're looking at YouTube, add annotations, add playlists. Curation is critically important. Don't make people think as we go down into the funnel, because if you make them think, you're going to lose them.
And Stu?
Yeah, it's, I think, to be honest, I probably touched upon a lot of this in my last kind of response, in that there are different ways you need to reach people. I'm no expert on the production side of things, so I'm not going to comment on that. But I just think you need to be very aware of, as you move through the funnel, there may be different vehicles where you need to house your video, which are most appropriate. So as I say, apps, when you're looking at kind of retention and loyalty, social media when you're looking at advocacy and consideration, and so on. So yeah, I think that's perhaps where I would offer the most advice, is make sure you're thinking about the vehicle in which your video is kind of presented based upon what you're actually trying to achieve in the different part of the life cycle.
Sure. I mean, I think this is an obvious answer. I haven't seen some data to back it up, but as a customer moves from awareness beyond, more than likely my guess is that their appetite to watch a longer form content probably does as well. So would it be fair? So yeah. So would it be fair to say that short for the awareness, and then they're going to engage a bit more and a bit more and a bit more?
Exactly. But people are afraid to do that, Mark. That's the issue. There's the 30-second mindset that we have to get through. All of our data, and with the past study, we looked at 250,000 videos. And longer form content works, oftentimes garnering more views, and I think people are just afraid to do it.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's move on to, I want to make sure I've got lots of time for audience Q&A. Actually, we'll do a couple more questions here, but how do you measure the success of, what KPIs do you look at certain points? For awareness, a lot of people look at views, and now time watched, and I'm referring to YouTube, of course. Yeah. But as you go down there, how do you measure that? I mean, and at the conversion, obviously we know how much we made, but what are some of the KPIs that you look at, and how do you measure that? And let's start with Tony.
We believe control group methodology is the best way to assess the impact and performance of a video campaign or program. We employ a methodology where we will target customers for video and non-video serving, and then we measure the performance and the metrics across both groups. So we'll look at things such as video views and click-through rates and all that good stuff, as much as business impact or business measurement such as revenues and calls to the service center, etc. Combining or comparing the results across the two groups, we look at the delta between the two as the measure of impact and value that smart video has brought to that particular program.
Yeah, and I guess that's the power of personalized video, and yet at the same time, there are other parts of the funnel where maybe it's more appropriate to have different types of content, and it's much harder to have that control group. And so how do you measure that at Oracle? I mean, how do you know that, you say measure, 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 how do you know that it's working and that it's worth the efforts?
So I don't know that we do it well at Oracle, but I have implemented a video reporting structure in a past life, and what I will say is that what I found out from that is it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish with the video. What is it? What's your goal? You know, from an awareness standpoint, yeah, it's great to figure out how many times somebody clicked on that video, whether they watched it all the way through. Beyond that, as you move down the marketing funnel, your metrics become much more multifaceted. Where an awareness video, it's great if you can drive people back to your website or to your product page. Once they're on the product page, did they watch another video? Did they register to view a webcast while they were there? Did they download a white paper? Did they do a trial? You know, did they download your trial software? So you want to look at all of those different measures as successful conversions because you are engaging that audience. Once you get past that engagement from that engagement stage and you're starting to look at consideration and conversion from a sales standpoint, then obviously you might be looking at different metrics, right? It may be, did they download the software? How many times did they come back and watch some of the training videos that you might have about that software or about that product? And you know, ultimately, where we at Oracle want to get, where I have, and I have done this in the past, I know it's possible. We were actually able to implement a capability of being able to determine whether or not that person went from a marketing engagement to actually entering into our CRM, our sales tracking database, and what the size of that opportunity was. So it is possible to get there. It's not an easy path to get there, but I think that you really need to look at video engagement and success metrics in that multifaceted way, and it comes back to what are you trying to accomplish.
Yeah, since you brought up ROI, and I want to ask a follow-up, and I'll come back to you, Rob, to ask your opinion. With the ROI, do you know, this is sometimes hard to do, but for example, with the customer service videos that you do, Crutchfield is a company that's done some really interesting things, empowering their customers to learn how to install equipment, et cetera, using video. And there's some savings that they have, rather than a profit, in that they don't have to fully staff this. And so, you know, are there ways to measure that as well at Oracle in particular?
I don't know that we're doing a lot of customer service videos that are, you know, that I would point to as being successful. Not at Oracle. I don't, you know, we have a little different mind frame about how we support customers there, but I do know that, you know, from past experience, yeah, you can do that. The other way that you can enable that in a very cost-effective way is with crowdsourcing and with building communities. So if you've got a product, if you've got an offering, a great way to help support some of those audiences is with user-generated. Let your community support each other, and maybe they can even make some how-to videos. And I have seen that done in the past. I've worked at companies that have done that in the past, and they've seen some really great benefits from it. You want to curate that content, obviously,
Yeah.
but in the community. But yeah.
Well, but yeah, brand as large as you gotta steer.
Yeah, you have to. Well, it depends on where you're. You know, is it a community-led effort or is it a company-led effort? But either way, you can have that UGC.
And then back to the first part of that question for you, Rob. You know, what are some of the, let's say beyond views, what are some other KPIs that are important to look at that maybe aren't first come to mind?
Yeah, you and I both know. On the view side, I think we have I think we have a bit of a view addiction. And many of you know views can be bought, and sometimes we get phone calls. We're kind of like YouTube CSI sometimes. You know, we get a phone call, it's like, oh, I bought a bunch of views and nothing happened to our business. And then we go and analyze the views, and we had one customer, it was a East Coast bank. And they did a massive view buying campaign and nothing happened, and we found out that lots of views were coming from Philippine teenagers. So bad things happen. So, you know, we gave up on views. We're really looking, views are important. They are a proxy, but they're not the ultimate metric. You know, we're looking at ways of, we're looking at engagement, especially with customers. And can I ask the audience a question?
Of course, yeah.
And shout out an answer. What do? You watch a YouTube video. What do you do next? Oh, you guys are overthinking this. Step back. I'll ask again. You watch a video. What do you do next? You watch another one. Okay? So by saying this, we don't have that typical click-through mentality. So what we're looking at is we're looking at viewing cycles. We're looking at what they watch. We're looking at follow-on views. If the company's sophisticated, we can look at metrics and possibly tag some of the information to find out what they're watching. So it's all about engagement, and if there's a takeaway here, focus on audience. Audiences engage. They last a lot longer on your YouTube channel, and surprisingly, some of the information that we're finding is when YouTube audiences, and I know YouTube biased, when YouTube audiences go to your website, we're starting to see a lot of them are actually on your website longer. So it's a completely different metrics mentality now as we start embracing video marketing.
Okay, well, we're almost out of time, and I do want to allow some people to ask some questions. So, but before I do that, thank you all. Are there any questions? Oh, great. I'll go down there.
Hi, my name is Ray from Voice Buddy. We do voiceovers on demand. And we have this really passionate audience out there, and yet the old sort of idea of media is it goes out there, and if it doesn't work, we take it down. And so now with this new dialogue that we have, I'm curious, are you seeing audiences influence the original content to improve it and be part of this sort of living focus group, if you will, that it gets better and better and better? Are there ways that we're doing that, or are we still just taking it down when it doesn't work?
I guess I'll handle that one. A lot of the content that we're producing is really oriented around specific solution sets and particular products. So we don't have a put it up there, it's not working, take it down mentality. It's put it up there, we'll leave it live somewhere in an archive, but we don't really take it down. We still allow that asset to live, and perhaps continue. We just defocus emphasis on it. We don't do a lot of. We don't allow our audiences to influence a particular asset. What we do is we think about our campaign from a holistic standpoint, and we adjust our campaign content, not our video content particularly. That's not to say we're not reusing videos, because we will, and we will recut the same footage if we feel that we can get additional usage out of it. But we think about it more from a marketing campaign content, product marketing content perspective, and what are the assets that help drive forward that goal for that campaign or for that product marketing effort.
Yeah,
Great.
Just
Well,
to add, sorry,
oh, yeah.
just to add, I mean, what we do is we look at, because our okay. What we do is we look at optimization based on the fact we deliver personalized content. So in some way we do get the feedback from the viewer of how effective that content's being. For instance, if we're delivering a video build that is designed to impact call deflection at the call center, we'll be able to track, again, through the control group methodology, whether that video content has had that impact. If it has, then we'll look to continue to optimize the content. If it hasn't, we'll do things such as go on site, listen to call logs, and sit there and listen to what kind of calls are coming in, and adjust the content of the videos to try and address that particular business issue or goal.
Yeah, that's the ideal. Yeah, real quick.
Yeah, I want to be slightly contrarian, which is kind of the nature, right? When you look at viewing behavior, the question is, how long does a tweet last? How long does a blog last? Well, if somebody's actually going to read it, it may last a little while. Videos have incredible shelf life. And one of the things that we found is oftentimes after about 4 to 5 months, a third of the views are going to continue accumulating. Your question's fantastic. And we see people, well, it was up here, it started off, and it's kind of tailored. And we've actually seen big companies yank videos. Leave it there. It's a long form, it's long form lottery. You're going to get views. Why would you take it down? It really works well.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much. Despite my attempts to leave enough time for a couple questions, we do have a hard stop with lunch. I want to thank everybody on our panel. There are a few vendors here. I don't invite them just because they provide services. I invite them because I actually believe in some of the things they're doing, and it's pretty powerful. And thank you, of course, to the major brand for all the insights. And even though I didn't leave enough time for Q&A, I believe that most of these folks will be here for the rest of this day, so it's time for lunch, but can we give them a round of applause, please?